Hey, I'm Jeremiah Ronner, and this is Deeply Rooted.
Deeply rooted in God's Word. Deeply rooted in God's Word.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to our latest episode of Deeply Rooted. I'm your host, Jeremiah Ronner, again, and we've got a great episode lined up for you today. I'm really excited about a couple of people we've got here live on location here at Mount Olive Church, two good friends of mine, and we want to talk about the subject of missions. I've got to my right hand here my good friend TJ McAmis. TJ wears a lot of hats, as does my friend Brett here. TJ is pastor of Mount Olive Church, father of three kids, husband, basketball coach, chemistry teacher. Brett, not too far off the path here as well. Worship leader, he and his wife here at Mount Olive Church. Also father of three kids. Also runs a food service here at UVA Wise and their own coffee production here. Lincoln Road Coffee, which is really great, by the way, so check that out and go buy that. So I'm going to give him a cheap plug. But again, really glad to have these guys here with us, and we want to jump right into the topic today. So, guys, thank you all so much for coming. I say we're talking about missions because we go back a long ways. For the last few years, we've had the opportunity to go not only locally but foreign and serve in a lot of different capacities, whether it be Nicaragua and Puerto Rico and here in our own Appalachian region. That's why I've invited you guys in to talk today, to be a big help to churches in the area, church leaders, people that are looking to get involved in ministry in that capacity. So I'm going to kick it off here with TJ, something that I tend to think, particularly people that grew up in church, and I think we've got a very similar background, all three of us, with being in church our entire life, even much more before salvation. But TJ, growing up, particularly here in the Appalachian region, what do you think the perception was of missions when you were a kid?
Well, not just as a kid, when I was early in my time as pastor, I think it's pretty much somebody that you meet at a church conference or somebody that comes traveling through on a Sunday night. You hear a missionary or somebody that's involved with mission speak and give their speech, and the church writes them a check, or you take up a love offering, and you kind of feel like that maybe you fulfilled the Lord's commission, and that's how I felt. And I was not for investing a lot in foreign missions. I felt like and was taught and was raised up under the idea that, well, we've got plenty around here to do, and there's truth in that. But I guess we'll talk more about the commandment of Christ later. But that was pretty much the perception. There's plenty around here to do. We'll just write a check. We'll not get involved. And personally, it was really a fear on my part to dive in deeper, because I felt a tug to maybe go and see what it was all about. So I think that perception kind of reinforced and justified my fear.
Brett, did you ever see anything growing up that would lead you into thinking, yeah, that's something I can get a part of, or did you see that as a big part of church, in your experience as a kid?
Well, my experience is similar to TJ. Growing up in a small church here in Wise, it was always just a check going to our missionaries who were in France, and thinking, well, they're doing the mission work for us, not necessarily that it's something that we have to get into. I'm sure there's plenty of things we can do here in our own town, plenty of people who need help that we can do here, and never really had the desire growing up in church to do any kind of foreign missions, just because I thought they already had that on lockdown.
So,
And Jeremiah, let me add one more thing there. And Brett knows, and most people who've been on a mission trip knows that when somebody presents a mission trip and they show the photos and they show the poverty maybe and the need, you can't feel that. You can't relate with that as well unless you've been on one. And so I think that may play into it a little bit.
Yeah.
now, like a lot of things, we follow in people's footsteps a lot of times, and certainly, like you said, we've been commanded through Scripture to serve and love people and share the gospel and disciple, not just here but everywhere. Is there anything you can point back to or maybe somebody that you look to and said, that was a launching point for me to get into missions, or at least reevaluate where I ranked it in my Christian walk?
In our church, I don't know how many years ago it was, I had just became pastor, and one of our leaders in the church asked if we could send our teenagers to a within the country mission. And there was, there wasn't any disagreement, but we did not really see a passionate need for that, and I don't think our leaders were available to do that, and we kind of let that go. And at that moment, I started kind of thinking about missions and where my place was, and at that time I told God if it ever opened up, I would go. And then Michelle Tiller came and said that there was a church that was willing to partner with us to go to Nicaragua, and it hit like a ton of bricks, almost like conviction when you're lost or when God's calling you to preach. And so I went on the first trip and met Don Gillette, and Don has been very influential. Mm-hmm. I spent 3 weeks last summer on mission, and he has been very influential in my passion for missions.
Brett, do you remember that big kind of get up and go moment, or somebody that pushed you into it?
Yeah, mine is a lot more recent. I've not been doing the missions as long as you guys have. I've been the past 2 years, and it's been amazing experiences. But mine was here at Mount Olive, seeing and hearing and experiencing the things that God does on the missions trip through our people. And when they bring that fire back and they bring the stories back, and you see that it has been a life-changing experience for them, I think I realized what I was missing out on. And I had never had that desire growing up in church, and I've always helped in church, and I'd like to think of myself as somebody who's willing to help people out and want to do things for people. But until I saw and experienced their stories of what God is able to do, that's what really made me want to go a couple of years ago.
Yeah. On that point, I'll stay with you, Brett, on this. Where do you think the biggest impact in your church has been through mission since you guys been involved in this?
The biggest impact that we have made?
Or you've seen, I guess. Yeah, I guess you've seen, in your church people.
I've seen our people and experienced it personally. The closeness that you gain, not only in relationship with God when you go on mission and get outside the box and experience that something new, but also the closeness that you gain within your own people when you get to spend time and really learn who they are and what's important to them. I think that has had the biggest impact on me, as well as I think I can speak for many people in our church who have experienced it. Growing closer to God and growing closer to each other.
Yeah. TJ, what about as pastor, I guess, what have you seen in the congregation?
When people go on a mission, they learn to get out of their comfort zone, and they stretch in the ministry. They do things because they're away from people they know that they probably would never venture to do around people they know. And they find that when they do step out and stretch out, that God shows up every time. So then they get the reward of the blessing of being obedient. And when they come home, they have that fire to want to continue, and now they have a newfound boldness. And so, if you want some concrete examples, we have started doing, all kinds of ministries that I don't even have to show up and do, because our people who went on the missions now become leaders in those different outreaches. Like we just completed a shoe outreach, and I had zero to do with it. And I walked in, and I had people praying for people as they left, opportunities to share the gospel. They had the shoes ready to go, and that's just one example, from things that we do after ball games, and just flooded of people willing to serve and willing to help. So that was the immediate change, is that we're taking church outside of the walls of a Sunday morning, and we're trying to take it out by serving others in just different ways. And people do not have to be motivated to do it anymore. They want to do it on their own. They come to me with ideas. Hey, we could start doing this in the community.
What about in your own walk, personally speaking? I know we've talked about the congregation, but you as an individual, what kind of impact has going, just locally and foreign had on you?
It's changed my view of church. When you go to a village and they're singing songs that, I don't know if they're contemporary or hymns or what they're singing, because I don't speak Spanish, but they're singing and you're feeling the Spirit, and then you get up to preach and there's not padded pews, but they're there, and you really have to focus on the gospel because they don't know the gospel. They've not been spoiled with the gospel like we have here in America. You start changing your perspective on church a lot. A lot of the traditional things that you have got so comfortable with are not necessary. It's really a simple message with a big heart, given with a big heart, and sharing what Jesus has done, not getting wrapped up in the little things. That and my desire to step out and do more serving, more servant leadership. And so I guess that would be immediate. My preaching has changed. The way that I preach has changed a little. Just preaching with an interpreter will change you. Learning how. But even my perception of the gospel has changed because I've seen it in a country that's not been, I hate to say spoiled, but we really, we can pick up any podcast, any YouTube channel, and they don't have those resources. So I guess that's the best answer I can give.
Yeah, Brett, have you been stretched, molded any more in your faith because of it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that until you step out of, as TJ says, our spoiled culture where we are, and you step out and truly help somebody who is in need, maybe even beyond need, that doesn't even describe it, until you're able to step out and help them, you don't realize how little you've done in your own life or in your own community to help others. And so, once I've gone and experienced that and seen that when you step out in faith and let God be in control and let God show you how to serve, until you've done that, you don't looking back, you're like, wow, how little have I really done in my life to serve others. And it's a big wake up call to go on a mission trip, and it's impacted me in a big way. It wasn't until I went on my first mission trip that I felt God called me into ministry and to be more involved, and so it's had a huge impact on my life for sure.
Jeremiah, can I just want to quickly add something too, as Brett. There's something that came to me. It's probably more simplified than what I just answered for myself. When we go on these mission trips, I see 3 phases that changes a person. And the first phase is always the poverty part of seeing people who are not as blessed as you are, and there's guilt that goes with that. And then there's I'm blessed, and there's thankfulness. But then there's a transition that goes from that to getting beyond that to stepping out and really serving somebody else and feeling joy over serving somebody, giving them a bowl of soup, giving them a T-shirt. And then by the end of it, though, there's the change of, well, these people are blessing me. I'm trying to serve them, but their joy that they have are blessing me. And so I think it changes you in 3 ways. You see how blessed you are. You step beyond the borders that you've set, and then you find the joy that is on both parties, the joy that comes with being most like Christ. So I guess that's a better simplified answer than what I gave for myself.
Yeah. Now, shifting gears just a little bit, because we've been talking about a lot of personal things and what it means to us, but there's a lot of people that get hesitant when you bring up missions, and they, I guess, bring in that aspect of fear, and they want to raise a lot of objections, like anything in life when it comes to ministry. But what advice would you give, and I'll start with Brett here, to people to combat that kind of fear that maybe they're pretty hesitant about stepping out?
Well, I think that, just to be honest, people are hesitant about missions because going on missions means you have to sacrifice something. Mm-hmm. You have to give something up. And maybe it's not just giving up a vacation or whatever, but you've got to give up yourself and get yourself out of the way and be completely selfless. And I think the thought of that is what scares people off or keeps people from going. Yeah, it may be that they don't want to give up a vacation, but even deeper, I think it's that they don't want to give up themselves to truly just be vulnerable. And to be transparent and let God use them in a big way. And my advice would be, just try it. Just try it once. Get out, get yourself out of the way, give in, and just sit back and watch what God can do.
Yeah, that's a good point. TJ, what about you?
I'll be afraid of missions. I'd never do that. I guess for the listeners, every trip I'm probably one of the biggest worrywarts. That's just the way I'm made. I guess I think Brett made a good point, so I won't speak on that. The having to give up self and power, control. That's really hard for a lot of people. And I think the other is the fear of the unknown. The fear of the unknown. Every time you go, there's an unknown factor, and kind of like, when Peter had to step into the unknown of the waters to say, I'd rather be over with Christ in the storm than away from Him. He had to step over the boat and then into the unknown. That's exactly what you do on every mission trip. You're stepping into unknown. So I think that's that fear, it bothers people.
I think some of the fear sometimes is just getting started, period. Like Brett was mentioning, you just need to go. Peter stepped out of the boat, and how do you do that? Well, you do it 1 foot at a time. What advice would you give to people that are so-called about to step out of the boat, and they're a little hesitant about that, and they don't know where to get started? You've been on quite a few, TJ, now, and you've been able to help organize a few. Why don't you speak to that for just a second about maybe ways that people can get involved if they're looking to get started?
First, I'll give them a scripture. In Acts 1 and verse 8, Jesus says, "But ye shall receive power after the Holy Ghost has come upon you, and ye shall be witnesses unto me both in Jerusalem," which was the local area, "in all Judea, the region, and Samaria, and then to the uttermost parts of the earth." You will be infused with power. The power to do it, anything for the Lord, doesn't come from us. It comes from God in us. And so taking that first step by trusting God's power in us, that's the first thing that you need to do. Then you need to pray and surround yourself with other people that's going to go on a mission trip, because after you make that decision, it won't be long before things will start things in your life will get frustrated, and Satan will really come at you in many different ways. And you need to set up a group to where you can have devotions together. You can talk about what's coming up, but you have to just commit, and then you have to stay. You have to commit, and you have to stay true to your decision and not waver, because there'll come a time when you'll say, "Why in the world did I say I was going to do this?" And that usually happens for me the first night on every trip. And these two guys both of you can testify to that, but you just got to stay with your decision and trust God. And follow through. But it is important to surround yourself with those people that's going on the mission before you go. Make a good relationship with them. Start devotion. Start sharing your thoughts and your emotions, because we're definitely strengthened in numbers.
Brett, you got any encouragement for people that are kind of on the cusp and just thinking about it and don't know really where to get started?
I think that one of the main things, and TJ touched on it, I think you really have to be, if you feel like there's a chance you may go, you've got to start way ahead to prepare for what the devil's going to throw at you. And I think you've got to be praying. I think you've got to be consistent in your devotions and reading the Bible, and to be ready and know ahead of time that things are going to come, and you're going to second guess yourself many times. But if you feel like that you're supposed to go and that you feel like God's needing you to go, stick with it. And you won't be sorry. You'll be blessed from it.
Now, it doesn't take long to look around, locally speaking, our nation in a whole, and then of course we've been out of the country multiple times. There's major areas of need, and I hear a lot of times, well, we just don't know where to get started, or we would if we knew, how to get involved more. Can you speak to a couple of areas? We'll start with TJ here, about experiences that you've had before where you see major needs that could be met right now. And obviously Mount Olive can't cover everything. You're just one church, you're just one family, you're just one guy. So to those people out there that are looking to get involved, what area would you tell them, or areas would you tell them that right now there's some need that needs to be met?
I would love to see, and we're actually in the works for this, like mission groups coming in and supported by local churches. There's construction needs around our community. we could bring in teams, or we could, unify as churches for the elderly. There's a lot of construction needs that need to be done. You can set up shop like Jeremiah, I know you've done, and hand out blankets and Bibles. We just completed our shoe outreach. That's as easy as going and donating, getting shoes, and announcing it and handing it out. There's backpack ministry. But I think more than anything that I see in our area is, we say all the time on the mission field, you got to earn the right to be heard. And there is a generation out there, there's young people that are looking into the generation in front of them around this area that is so drug infested and controlled by drugs. The church needs to step up. I know it's youth, I know it's just teenagers, but I think one of the greatest needs is that we need to pour into the young people, the next generation, and really be a light to them in a dark place. Do that however you can. Show up at ball games, do things after ball games, really commit to your youth group, and invest in that next generation, because I guess being a school teacher, there's not a lot of leadership in a lot of the lives of these kids. And I think that's one of the church's role, is to step in and do that. So I know there's a lot of financial and poverty needs, but I see that spiritual need of rolling back the darkness in the lives of our youth more than any, because it is becoming an epidemic in this area, the drugs and the control that the drugs are bringing.
Yeah, so that's good. Brett, is there anything that stands out to you that you'd want to speak to that is a big area of concern?
Yeah, I love what TJ says about the youth. I totally agree with that. But I've got 3 small kids, and so I tend to always be thinking about children, and we don't realize how blessed we are, and we don't realize how much people struggle, and how much people go without and do without. And I think about 3 things that people need and that kids need, and you think about food and clothing and shelter. And I really believe that right here in our own backyard, there is huge need and big opportunity for people in our area, churches, no matter how big or small, to help people in those 3 areas. I think hunger is a lot bigger deal in our area than we think it is. I think there's kids that go without, and I know there's some great programs out there. The Lunchbox Project, which I know many churches in the area, including ours, help during the summer to provide meals. And then shelter. There are homeless in our area, and there's organizations that try to help with that. And your church could get involved with them to see how you can help those people in need. So clothing as well. Like TJ mentioned, the shoe drive. That's something that could definitely be one time a year is not enough. Right. And so there's definitely room for as many as want to get involved in those areas, and I think there's a huge need for that.
And if your church would like to get involved with some of that, we are involved with a lot of those. You can contact me. The Brown Bag Ministry is a great ministry over the summer, where your church takes the ministry for a week and they pack the lunches, and then they deliver those to needy kids. We do have a lady in our church that does a snack ministry, because not all kids have the money for snack at school, and so some kids have a snack and some kids come to school when it's snack time and they don't have one. That's a way that you can get involved. Of course, the lunch program and all those things. So if your church is interested, then you can contact me, and I'll try to help get you connected with the right people.
Yeah, that's good. Plenty to do, no doubt about it, and no shortcoming of areas to love on people. One of the things we've learned to do over the years, and I want to close with this, we picked this up, and you mentioned his name earlier, Don Gillette of Because We Care Ministries there in Nicaragua, taught us to do something usually on the end of every day after we get out from village ministry or what have you. We come back and we have what's called a God moment, and we just kind of speak to where is it God was impressing on us that day. It's something that stood out to us, and we typically share a verse. I'm not going to ask you necessarily share a verse with that day, but looking back over all of your time being able to go and serve, whether it be here in country or outside, is there one specific God moment that stands out to you that you'd like to share with people? And I'll start with Brett on this one.
Yeah, we last year going to Puerto Rico was my first trip, and there's a moment that stands out to me. It's kind of a chain of occurrences, but we knew we had worked in a gentleman's house all week, and on the last day we knew we would present him with the gospel and give him a Bible and try to walk through the gospel with him. TJ was on the trip with me, so naturally I assumed TJ is going to be the one to take care of all that. So, in the back, I'm trying to look up Google Translate and just see what I might chime in here and there, Jesus loves you, or a few things like that I could add to whatever TJ was going to say. And so as I was getting that together, about that time, TJ says, well, I'd like for somebody to share the gospel today. And for whatever reason, I said, well, I'd like to try. And, I think that was God just helping me to get out of my comfort zone a little bit. And I was able to, just go through a simple version of the gospel. And that's all it took that day, was just a simple version of the gospel. I felt like he understood what we were saying. And, even through the barriers, God can work. But that was a special moment for me to be able to step out of my comfort zone a little bit and share even through a language barrier. But that stands out.
That's good. TJ, what about your big God moment over all this time?
Well, there's been a lot. Brett mentions that one, and God had put on my heart that Brett was made for ministry and perhaps maybe to preach the word. And so, as a pastor, you step back and watch people and you try to prod them into those things. And then when they do that and God's going to move in their life, that's always moments like that for me as I go as a pastor. But I think individually, what is the name of that village on top of the mountain? Y'all remember? Cacao. Yeah. The first time we went to Cacao, which is, I think it was over a 3-mile one-way hike, 6 miles total. I can't remember. I timed it, but
this is in Nicaragua.
Nicaragua.
Yeah.
And all us two, me and Jeremiah have been, and Brett's not been yet, but I think he might go next year. But the hike is extremely difficult, and I remember getting up to the top, and Don told me I was going to have to preach, and I did not feel like preaching once we got up there because the hike was extremely difficult. Well, I got to share the word, and it was an amazing service, and it ended with a great time of altar prayer, and one of the best church services I've ever been in a village on the top of a mountain that has no road, and I'm telling you, a hike up rocks and just a riverbed. It was tough. So walking back down, my big God moment came when I started thinking about, as a pastor, the time and the hours and the things I think that I do. And a lot of times as pastor, you get to the point thinking, well, I'm doing so much for the Lord. And sometimes you can even let yourself get discouraged because you think, well, I'm doing so much. But I remember specifically, I missed the cutoff and almost got lost because I was having such a God moment. But I remember God showed me, what about Peter and Paul? When this gospel first went out, these missionary journeys that they went on was much more dangerous and a lot harder than what I just did. But they were so committed to deposit the gospel in all the world that those things, you can go read what Paul said towards the end, how devastated his body was and how the troubles he had been through. That woke me up a little bit to say, TJ, hey, you're really not doing that much for the sake of the gospel. So that was probably my biggest God moment on the trips.
That's good. Well, guys, thank you guys for being here today and being a part of Deeply Rooted. We appreciate you being a part of the podcast. I know you got super busy schedules and took some time out to be here with us today. I want to go ahead and shut us down here, and we want to thank y'all for being here with us today and the ministry that you do. Again, you guys have gave me the opportunity and the open door to serve with you on a lot of mission opportunities, and hopefully we got a whole lot more in our future together. But I would encourage you, if you've enjoyed this podcast, particularly with these guys talking about their experiences, please don't hesitate. We've talked about that today. If you're on that cusp of thinking about, man, we'd really like to get involved, as Brett said, just go. You got to get out there. You got to step out, just as we mentioned, as Peter did, right out of the boat, and you've got to go forward. And I promise you there is blessing on the other side of it, but more importantly, God is going to get glory from that. So we'll be right back in just a second with some closing announcements, but until next time, God bless, and we love you. All right, guys, Jeremiah back with you for some closing announcements. Now, I've kept TJ and Brett around with me because I'd really like for them to get the opportunity to tell you about Mount Olive. And so I'm going to let TJ talk a little bit about service times and locations that they have, because if you're in the area and you're looking for a church, particularly in the Wise area, I highly recommend you coming here. So, TJ, why don't you tell them a little bit about Mount Olive?
We appreciate Jeremiah asking us to come today and give us an opportunity to speak. On Sunday, on a regular Sunday, we have Sunday school at 10, we have service at 11, and then we have evening Bible study at 6, and we have something for all the kids. And many times after that, we'll have what we call Sunday night lights. We'll open up all the facilities and get some pizza or something and have fellowship. On Wednesday night, we have class for all ages at 7. And at Ridge Point, which is our Mount Olive campus in Clintwood, we have services again on Sunday morning at 11 and Wednesday night at 6:15.
All right, Brett, why don't you tell them a little bit about some upcoming things here at Mount Olive and Ridge Point that y'all have going on?
Yeah, we have a couple of exciting things. This coming Sunday, August the 12th, we're having our annual Family Fun Day service. It's a fun event to where we actually have our worship service outside. This Sunday, and that Sunday only, is going to start at 10:30 with worship and with service, and then we're going to have some all kinds of games, from cornhole to some friendly family competitions and a picnic. It's going to be a really good time. At our Clintwood campus, we're going to have actually combining both campuses to do a revival. It's going to start on August 26th, 27th, and 28th. That first night will be a Sunday starting at 6 p.m. We're really excited about that and excited to see God do some awesome things with both campuses there. So, and then the first night will be at 6, and then on Monday and Tuesday it'll be at 7. So that's for the revival at the Clintwood campus.
Awesome. Sounds good. Again, thank you guys for being here, and I can't tell you enough, folks, about this church. If you're looking for a good Bible-believing, Bible-teaching, Jesus uplifting place, this is it. Like they said, here at Mount Olive, located just across from the sheriff's office here in Wise, and then Ridge Point as well. We highly encourage you to check those out if you're in the area and are looking for a good church to attend and be a part of. I would highly recommend it here to you. So again, thank you guys for being a part of it. We'd love to have you back again sometime. So if we get a chance, we'd appreciate you come back again. But God bless you guys, and hope you have a great week in Jesus.